Today, we're talking about something that could completely reshape how investors look at metals over the next few years. The idea that silver may be on the edge of a major breakout. Not a slow, steady rise, but a powerful move driven by real economic forces, and why 2026 is being seen by many as a potential turning point where everything finally comes together. You're about to hear something that most investors are still ignoring, and by the time it becomes obvious, the opportunity may already be gone. Because right now, beneath the surface of the global economy, a quiet shift is happening, one that has historically led to explosive moves in silver prices. And if you're paying attention early, you could be ahead while everyone else is still trying to catch up. So imagine waking up and seeing silver not slowly climbing, but suddenly surging. Headlines everywhere, people scrambling. And the question on everyone's mind is how they missed it. Now, here's the part most people don't realize. These moments don't come with clear warnings. They build quietly in the background while attention is somewhere else. And that's exactly what makes them so powerful. Because by the time the crowd notices, the biggest gains are often already behind. And that's why understanding what's happening right now could be one of the most important insights for anyone paying attention to metals or the broader financial system. Before we go deeper, if you want clear, no-noise breakdowns like this that actually help you stay ahead of major market shifts, make sure you subscribe to Metal Market Insight, because this channel is all about connecting the dots early, not after the move has already happened. And timing in markets like this can make a bigger difference than almost anything else you do. So let's talk about why silver is different, because this isn't just another asset moving on speculation. Silver sits in a unique position where it's both an industrial metal and a store of value, which means it reacts to multiple forces at the same time, from economic uncertainty to rapid technological growth. And that combination is exactly what can turn a slow market into something explosive when conditions start to align. Right now, those conditions are starting to build in a way that's hard to ignore. Industrial demand is rising fast, driven by sectors like solar energy, electric vehicles, and advanced electronics, all of which rely heavily on silver. While at the same time, supply isn't expanding at the same pace. And when you have that kind of imbalance forming quietly in the background, it creates pressure that doesn't stay hidden forever. It eventually shows up in price, often faster than most people expect. And here's where the story becomes even more interesting, because unlike other commodities, silver doesn't just depend on one type of demand. It has multiple engines pushing it forward at the same time. And when those engines start running together, the effect can be powerful because it's not just investors buying silver, it's industries needing it, governments indirectly influencing it, and global trends accelerating its importance in ways that weren't as strong a decade ago. At the same time, mining production isn't keeping up in a meaningful way. New silver mines take years to develop, and many existing mines are dealing with higher costs and lower ore quality, which limits how quickly supply can respond. So even if demand spikes suddenly, there's no immediate way to flood the market with new silver, and that lag between demand and supply is exactly what creates sharp price movements. Now add another layer to this, the broader economic environment, where inflation concerns haven't fully disappeared. Global debt levels are still rising, and uncertainty continues to shape how investors think about protecting their wealth. And in times like these, assets like silver start to gain attention not just as commodities, but as potential stores of value, especially when confidence in traditional systems begins to weaken even slightly. And this is where things start to shift psychologically, because markets are not just driven by numbers, they're driven by perception. And once investors begin to see silver not as a quiet metal, but as an opportunity, that change in mindset can spread quickly. And when enough people start thinking the same way at the same time, momentum builds. And that momentum is often what turns a steady trend into something much bigger. And once that momentum begins, it rarely moves in a straight line. It accelerates in waves, pulling more attention with each move higher. And that's when the market dynamic shifts from quiet accumulation to active participation, where more investors, funds, and even everyday people start entering the space, not wanting to miss what feels like a growing opportunity, and that shift alone can significantly amplify price action. Another important factor that often gets overlooked is how small the silver market actually is compared to other major asset classes, which means it doesn't take massive amounts of capital to move it in a big way. Even a moderate increase in institutional interest can create outsized effects. And when larger players begin positioning themselves, it can quietly tighten available supply even further before the broader public fully realizes what's happening. This is also where historical patterns start to matter, because if you look back at previous silver cycles, you'll notice a common theme: long periods where the price feels stagnant or underwhelming, followed by sudden breakouts that exceed expectations. And those breakouts are often driven by the same kind of conditions we're starting to see now: a combination of supply constraints, rising demand, and shifting investor sentiment all aligning at once. And one of the key signals many experienced investors watch closely is the relationship between silver and gold, because during strong bullish phases, silver tends to outperform gold at a faster pace. And that catch-up effect can lead to rapid percentage gains, especially when confidence starts flowing back into the metal sector as a whole. And right now, that relationship suggests there may still be room for silver to move more aggressively if momentum builds. So when people talk about a potential turning point in 2026, they're not pointing to a single event or prediction. They're looking at a buildup of multiple forces that could reach a tipping point around that time, where economic pressure, industrial demand, and investor behavior all begin reinforcing each other. And when that kind of alignment happens, markets don't just drift upward. They can move in ways that feel sudden, powerful, and difficult to catch if you're not already paying attention. And what makes this even more important is that these kinds of opportunities don't usually feel obvious in the moment. They often feel uncertain, even boring at times, because the real moves are built during periods when attention is low and confidence is mixed, and that's exactly why so many people miss them. Not because the signs weren't there, but because they didn't seem exciting enough at the time to take seriously. Think about how many times in the past markets have made major moves only after long stretches of doubt and hesitation, where most people were either distracted or waiting for clearer confirmation. And by the time that confirmation arrived, prices had already moved significantly. And that pattern is something worth paying attention to because it tends to repeat more often than people expect. Right now, silver is still in that phase where it's not dominating headlines every day. It's not the main topic in casual conversations. And that's usually where the early stage of a larger move begins, when an asset is quietly building strength without widespread attention. And that's also when the biggest advantage exists for those who are willing to look deeper and stay patient. At the same time, there's a growing awareness among more informed investors that the current global environment isn't entirely stable. And while it may not feel like a crisis, there are enough underlying concerns to keep people thinking about diversification and protection. And silver naturally becomes part of that conversation because of its history and its practical uses in the real economy. So the real question isn't just whether silver will move, it's whether you're able to recognize the setup before it becomes obvious, whether you're willing to pay attention when things are still developing, and whether you can stay focused long enough to see how these trends unfold, because in markets like this, patience and awareness often matter more than trying to chase momentum after it's already in full swing. And as we move closer to the coming years, the timeline starts to matter more, because markets don't wait for perfect clarity, they move when enough pressure builds. And many analysts believe that by the time we approach 2026, several of these underlying forces could reach a point where they begin to accelerate together, creating the kind of environment where silver doesn't just rise gradually, but starts to move with real strength and speed. But here's something important to keep in mind. This isn't about predicting an exact price or a specific date. It's about understanding the direction of pressure and how multiple factors are aligning. Because when you focus too much on exact numbers, you can miss the bigger picture. And the bigger picture right now is that silver is quietly positioning itself in a way that could lead to a much larger move than most people are currently expecting. This is also where discipline comes into play because it's easy to get caught up in short-term noise, small price movements, daily headlines, and opinions that change every week. But the real opportunity often comes from stepping back and looking at the longer trend, asking yourself what is building over time and whether the current conditions support a stronger move in the future rather than reacting to every small fluctuation. If you've been following along, now is a good time to share your perspective. Do you think silver is truly setting up for a major breakout in the next few years? Or do you believe it will continue moving slowly without any dramatic shift? Drop your thoughts in the comments because hearing different viewpoints helps create a clearer picture and adds depth to the conversation for everyone watching. And if you found this breakdown useful or it made you think differently about where things might be heading, consider sharing it with someone who's interested in investing or trying to understand the future of metals. Because sometimes one idea, seen at the right time, can completely change how someone approaches the market. And that's exactly the kind of value we aim to bring consistently on Metal Market Insight. And as we wrap this up, the key takeaway is not that silver will definitely explode on a specific date, but that the conditions forming today are very similar to the early stages of past major moves, where demand slowly builds, supply struggles to keep up, and investor attention remains low until suddenly everything shifts at once and the market reprices much faster than most people are prepared for. What matters most right now is awareness, because the biggest financial opportunities are often not about reacting late. They are about recognizing patterns early, understanding where pressure is building, and staying patient while the story develops in real time, even when it doesn't look exciting on the surface, because that is exactly how accumulation phases usually feel before major expansions. So if 2026 does turn out to be a turning point for metals, it won't feel like a surprise to those who are paying attention today. It will feel like a confirmation of signals that were already building for years. And the difference between those who see it early and those who notice it late often comes down to how closely they were watching the fundamentals instead of just the headlines. This is why we break down these long-term narratives here on Metal Market Insight, because understanding the bigger picture gives you an advantage that short-term noise can never provide. And in markets like silver, that perspective can make all the difference between chasing moves and preparing for them in advance. And with that, the real question I'll leave you with is simple. Will you start paying attention before the move happens, or after it becomes obvious to everyone else? Because in markets like these, timing is everything, and the early signals are already on the table for those willing to see them.